In a quiet suburban neighborhood, there stood an old house on Elm Street, a place full of memories. It was a two-story building, the kind of home that had witnessed the growth of a family over decades. The once white walls were now a little faded, and the garden that had once been carefully manicured now grew wild. But to Lily, the house was a symbol of everything she had ever known. Lily, now 28 years old, had grown up in this house. Her father, Robert, had bought it when she was a child. It was a humble home, but it was full of love. Or so she had believed. She spent her childhood running through the garden, playing with her father, and hearing stories of how he had worked hard to buy their house with his own hands. But now everything had changed. The house, once a symbol of family and love, was about to tear them apart. It all started a few months ago when Robert, now in his late 50s, fell ill. It wasn't anything catastrophic at first, just a few health issues that required him to slow down. But as time went on, his condition worsened. The doctors gave him a grim prognosis, and it became clear that his time was running out. Lily, who had been living in a neighboring city, immediately moved back home to care for her father. She took leave from her job and spent her days making sure he was comfortable, arranging doctor's appointments, and handling the household chores that he could no longer manage. At first, Robert was reluctant to accept her help. He was a proud man, one who had always provided for his family and refused to rely on others. But as his health deteriorated, he had no choice but to lean on Lily, who, despite the emotional weight, was there for him every step of the way. Despite the love and dedication Lily showed, a cloud of tension began to hang over the house. As Robert's illness progressed, the stress of the situation began to take its toll on both of them. One evening, as they sat in the living room, Robert broke the silence with words that would change everything. "Lily," he said, his voice hoarse and weak, "I need to talk to you about something important." Lily looked at him, her heart pounding in her chest. "What is it, Dad?" Robert hesitated, his gaze shifting away from hers. "I know you've been helping me with everything, and I appreciate it more than you can imagine. But I want to make sure the house stays in the family. It's the only thing I have left to give you. I want you to have it." Lily was taken aback. "What do you mean, Dad?" "Of course, I'll keep it. It's our family home." Robert nodded, but there was a hesitation in his eyes. "You've been thinking. Maybe it's time to sell the house. I know the market is good right now, and you could get a lot of money for it. You'd be set for life, Lily. It's what I've always wanted for you." Lily felt a rush of emotions. The house wasn't just a building to her, it was everything. It was the place where her mother had passed away, the place where her father had raised her, the place that held every memory of her childhood. To sell it felt like a betrayal of everything she had ever known. "Dad, I don't want to sell it," she said, her voice trembling. "This house means too much to me. It's where I grew up. We can't just let it go." Robert's eyes hardened. "Lily, you don't understand. I'm not going to be around much longer, and I want you to have security. I want you to have a future. You've been living paycheck to paycheck for years, and I know you struggle. You deserve better." The words stung, but Lily tried to hide it. "I don't need money, Dad. I need you." Robert's face softened, but the stubbornness in his voice remained. "I can't leave you with nothing, Lily. Eve worked hard for this, and I want you to have it. I want you to have a better life than I did." Lily stood up, walking toward the window, her mind racing. She couldn't believe what was happening. This wasn't just about a house. It was about the legacy of her family, the memories that were tied to every wall, every room, every corner. The thought of losing it all for money was more than she could bear. But then, something inside her clicked. Robert was right in one way. She had struggled financially for years. She had always dreamed of a better life, a life where she didn't have to worry about bills or debts. She could sell the house, get the money, and start fresh. But the thought of her father being gone, the thought of this house, their home, turning into something else entirely, broke her heart. "I can't do this, Dad," Lily said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I can't sell this house. Not after everything." Robert's face twisted with frustration. You don't understand, Lily. I'm trying to do what's best for you. This isn't about me anymore. It's about you and your future. The argument went on for hours, each word spoken filled with pain and regret. Robert, in his weakened state, pushed for what he thought was best for his daughter. Lily, in turn, fought for the one thing that had always grounded her, the one thing that connected her to her past and her mother, the house. The rift between them grew deeper as the days passed. Robert's health continued to decline, and the pressure to make a decision loomed over them like a storm cloud. Lily, torn between her love for her father and her attachment to the house, found herself in an impossible situation. 1 week later, the decision was made. Robert passed away quietly in his sleep, with Lily by his side. The loss was devastating. Lily had spent every moment with him during his last months, trying to make his final days comfortable, but now she was left alone with the burden of their unfinished conversation. In the days following his death, Lily wrestled with the choice her father had wanted her to make. Should she sell the house, as he had requested, and use the money to secure her future? Or should she keep the house, the last piece of her family's history, even if it meant sacrificing her financial stability? It wasn't until she was going through her father's belongings, sorting through old photographs and letters, that she found something that gave her clarity, a letter her father had written to her mother many years ago, before she passed. In it, Robert spoke about his dreams for their family, about his love for Lily, and his wish that she would always know the value of family over material things. Tears filled Lily's eyes as she read the letter. Her father hadn't wanted her to sell the house for the money, he had wanted her to have it as a reminder of their love, their history, and their bond. The house wasn't just a possession, it was a piece of their family's soul. Lily made her decision. She wouldn't sell the house. She would keep it, not for the money, but for the memories, for the legacy of the love her father had tried so hard to give her. It wasn't about security. It was about the values that had shaped her life, the values that she knew her father had wanted her to hold dear. Months passed, and Lily took on the task of restoring the house. It wasn't easy, and it wasn't always affordable, but she did it with love and care, knowing that her father would have wanted it this way. The house was more than just a building, it was a home, and it would always be her home. As she worked on the house, Lily began to feel a sense of peace. The arguments, the pain, the loss, all of it had brought her closer to understanding what truly mattered in life. It wasn't money. It wasn't possessions. It was the love of family, the memories that shaped us, and the choices we make to honor those who came before us. And so, in the quiet moments when she sat on the porch, looking at the house her father had once loved so much, Lily knew that she had made the right choice. Not just for herself, but for her family, for her father. The house was hers now, not because of the money, but because of the love that had built it. Lily stood on the porch, gazing at the overgrown garden. The wind gently stirred the trees, carrying with it a sense of nostalgia. It was the place where her father had taught her to ride a bike, the place where they had spent hours together, talking about everything and nothing. The garden, like the house, was falling into disrepair, but to Lily, it still held a sense of warmth of home. Her father's death had left a void that nothing could fill. It wasn't just the house that she was mourning, it was the loss of the man who had shaped her life, who had shown her the meaning of sacrifice, of hard work, and of love. The arguments they had had over the house seemed insignificant now, but they had lingered in her heart. The decision to keep the house had been made with a heavy heart. She knew it wasn't about the money, but she couldn't shake the feeling that something had been left unresolved between them. In the days that followed, Lily immersed herself in the task of restoring the house. The first thing she did was to clean out the rooms. There was a lot of clutter, old furniture, boxes filled with things her father had kept over the years. As she went through each room, she felt a sense of connection to the past. Her father's presence was still there, in the faded photos on the walls, in the bookshelves filled with old novels, in the furniture that had been carefully chosen to make their house a home. But the house had also changed since his death. The walls seemed quieter, emptier. It was as though the house itself was grieving. As the weeks passed, Lily began to make small changes. She repaired the cracked walls, replaced the old curtains, and brought in fresh furniture. It wasn't a grand transformation, but it was enough to make the house feel alive again. Yet, no matter what she did, there was a part of her that still felt unsettled. She couldn't shake the feeling that she was carrying a weight, something unresolved, a question that had lingered between her and her father. One afternoon, as Lily was cleaning the attic, she stumbled upon a dusty old box. Inside, she found more letters, notebooks, and documents from her father's past. She sat on the attic floor, surrounded by these remnants of her father's life, and began to sift through the papers. Most of them were business documents, but there was one letter that caught her attention. It was a letter to Lily from when she had left for college, written just before her mother's death. She had never seen this letter before. In it, her father spoke of his hopes for her future, of the dreams he had for her to be successful and independent. He wrote about the struggles he had faced, the sacrifices he had made, and how he wanted her to have everything he hadn't been able to provide. But there was more to the letter. Her father had written about the house, their home, and how much it meant to him. He had expressed that, above all else, he wanted Lily to have it, to keep it as a way to remember him and her mother. But the letter also contained something unexpected, something that Lily hadn't been aware of. Her father had been struggling with debt for years. He had taken out loans to keep the house, to ensure that they would always have a roof over their heads. The house, the one thing Lily had always considered a symbol of their family's strength, had been a source of immense financial strain for her father. He had never shared this with her. Instead, he had kept it a secret, wanting to protect her from the burden of knowing. Lily's heart sank as she read the letter. Her father had never wanted her to feel the weight of the financial struggles. He had worked tirelessly to provide for her, to give her the life he had always dreamed of for her. But now, in his absence, Lily was faced with a choice that her father had tried to shield her from. The weight of the decision was even greater than before. She had thought that keeping the house would be a way to preserve the past, to honor her father's memory. But now she realized that the house was not just a symbol of love, it was also a symbol of sacrifice, of hidden struggles. Her father had worked himself to the bone to keep it, but in doing so, he had created a legacy of debt and uncertainty. Lily knew she had to make a choice. She couldn't keep the house forever if it meant being buried under the weight of her father's debt. The thought of selling it felt like a betrayal, but the thought of losing everything in order to keep it was just as painful. As Lily sat at the kitchen table, holding the letter in her hands, she realized that she could no longer ignore the reality of the situation. The house, for all its memories and sentimental value, was no longer just a home. It was a financial anchor that threatened to drown her. She could sell it and pay off the debt, or she could try to find a way to keep it and deal with the consequences. The decision wasn't easy, but it was necessary. A week later, Lily contacted a realtor and began the process of selling the house. It wasn't something she wanted to do, but it was something she had to do. The house had been her father's dream, but it wasn't hers. She had her own dreams, her own future to build. It was time to let go of the past and move forward. As the days went by, Lily found herself torn between the relief of making a decision and the grief of losing something so precious. The house had been a part of her life for so long, and now she was about to lose it. The memories of her childhood, of her father's love and sacrifice, would always remain with her, but the house itself would be gone. On the day of the sale, Lily stood in the empty living room, one last time, and said goodbye. The house was no longer the place where she had grown up. It was no longer the home she had shared with her father. It was a chapter of her life that had come to an end, and she had to accept that. As she walked out of the house for the final time, Lily felt a sense of peace. It wasn't the peace of letting go easily, it was the peace of knowing that she had made the right choice. She had honored her father's memory by making sure that the burden of debt would no longer weigh her down. She had learned that sometimes, in order to move forward, we have to let go of the past. The months following the sale were difficult, but Lily slowly began to rebuild her life. The money from the sale allowed her to pay off her debts and invest in her future. She moved into a small apartment in the city, closer to her job. It wasn't the grand life she had once imagined, but it was a life that was hers. A life that was free from the weight of her father's financial struggles. Lily never forgot the house, though. It was always with her, in her memories, in her heart. But she had learned that home wasn't just a place, it was a feeling. It was the love and support we carry with us, no matter where we go. And as Lily looked ahead, she realized that her father's greatest gift to her wasn't the house, it was the lessons he had taught her. He had shown her what it meant to sacrifice for those we love, to protect them even when it costs us everything. And in the end, Lily understood that the true value of the house wasn't in the walls or the roof, it was in the love that had been built within it.